Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am joined by one of my favorite people, hands down, Ron Tite. Ron and I have known each other for a few years now, and every time I hear him present, I walk away inspired to go change the world. And hopefully this time together today will do that for you as well. A bit of background on Ron. He is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and investor who has always blurred the lines between art and commerce. He has been an award-winning advertising writer and creative director for some of the world's most respected brands, including Air France, Evian, Fidelity, Hershey, Johnson & Johnson, Kraft, Intel, Microsoft, and so many others. Ron is founder of Church and State, an agency that unifies content and advertising for global brands and media companies. He is in demand as a speaker all over the world. Ron speaks to leading organizations about creativity, disruption, branding, and leadership, some of the topics that he's going to share with us today. Ron has also written 2 books, with his most recent one, Think, Do, Say: How to Seize Attention and Build Trust in a Busy World. Hit store shelves in October 2019. And if you haven't checked it out yet, you will want to grab a copy after today. So Ron is going to share his thoughts on how to start the right leadership framework to effectively lead your business through the chaos and come out the other side stronger. But before diving into the webinar, there's just a couple logistical things I want to cover. We are going to spend about 45 minutes together today, with Ron's presentation about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have 15 minutes set aside for Q&A at the end. Attendees will be muted throughout the entire presentation, but the way to reach us is either through the chat, or you can ask a question at any time during the presentation. And you can see that on the right-hand area of the panel, where you can send a question over to us, and we will answer it at the end. Additionally, we will be emailing all registrants and attendees a recording of this webinar and a link to register for our second webinar with Ron that is August 5th. So with that, please join me in welcoming Ron Tite.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and hello, everybody. Although I feel like I should, Rebecca, whenever these start, I should feel like I should do this, right? You know, I should kind of be going. Sorry, I was on mute, because every single meeting seems to start that way, right? So thank you for unmuting me and giving me the power to unmute, and lovely to see everybody out here today. And thanks for showing up. This is amazing. And thanks for Rebecca and the team at Ruby for putting this all together. This is amazing. Now, you know what? Rebecca kind of talked a little bit about this idea of how do we really look at what we're in and how do we lead our way out of this. Now, the pandemic has been many different things for many different people. And I mean, not in a competition, right? I mean, not a competition. So what I do want to do is just give you, an example of where I was, because you see, the pandemic was declared on the 11th of March. And on the evening of the 12th of March, my wife and I went to a hospital. And the morning of the 13th, we had this little guy. And so this is Benjamin Tite, our second son. And you might be asking yourself, wow, what's it like to have a newborn and a 2.5-year-old as a 50-year-old in a pandemic, in a lockdown situation? My response, my friends, is it is not ideal. Not ideal. No, not, and it's a horrible idea because it's not ideal. You see, that's what we do here. We justify our mistakes. Now, that's on the personal side. It's been glorious, obviously. It's been lovely. It's been amazing. Can we do this for 8 hours in a row so I don't have to go back? Yeah? Okay, great. That's on the personal side. On the business side, this has meant different things for different people. And I've asked a lot of people, did a quick kind of some earlier research in the pandemic. And simply asked this question, what is the single biggest leadership challenge that you've had during the pandemic? What has it been? And think about this for you. What is the single biggest leadership challenge you've had? Now, the number one answer was communication from above. from senior management, communication from above. That was number one, as it normally is. Now, number two was what's the biggest leadership challenge? It is what they call the great unknown, which is how can I plan for, how can I forecast, how can I think about a time, and I don't know what is going to be on that other side. I don't know where consumer mindset is going to be. I don't know where my organization is going to be. I don't know where sales are going to be. I don't know legally where we're going to be and what we can do. So it's this idea of the great unknown. And I thought there was this great line that we have to manage our desire for certainty with our inability to provide any. That was just from a random user. Think about that, because we all want the certainty. We want to manage the desire for certainty with our inability to provide any. Now, here's what's really interesting to me, because when I said what's the biggest leadership challenge, these were the top 8, okay? And you can look at those from the communication from above, maintaining engagement, emotionally supporting my team. How do I do that? The work-life balance of how am I working from home or am I living at work? What's the difference? How do I connect with people? How do I gather the self-motivation so I can lead by example? How do I do that? And then when do I know it's going to be safe to bring my team back and safe to do certain things? So those were the top 8. But when I look at the percentages, number one, communication from above. But my friends, this was really only 15% of the people. Number one was only 15% of the people. So if you do the math on this, you can see this does not add up to 100. No, it does not. And the reason is because there are actually 18 different soul leadership challenges that people have. We keep saying we're all in this together. I don't know that we are. I actually don't know that we are. We might be in it together, but we're not experiencing it together. And I think that in and of itself is the biggest leadership challenge, that every single one of your customers or consumers and every single one of your prospects and every single one of your team members or your suppliers or your partners, everyone's going through something completely different. How do we lead that? How do we plan for growth with that? Well, there's a couple of things that we need to do. The first thing is, here's what we can think about where we're actually at. Now, I am not a great driver, horrible driver. Failed my first time out to get my license when I was 16 years old. Thank you. But here's what I know about car racing. I know that anybody can win a car race in the straightaway, right? I mean, you just gun it. You gun it. Put the pedal to the metal, and you see how fast you can go. And the one who wins that straightaway race, the drag race, is the person who just put the more money into the product, into the engine a year ago. That's how you win in the straightaway. But the reality is, races aren't won in the straightaways. Races are won in the corners. So what happens in a corner? Well, here's what happens. Race car driver comes out of the straightaway, enters the corner. The first thing they need to do is they need to slow down. And the reason they need to slow down is because they need to gain control of the car. Now, once they've got control of the car, they do that because they can see the instruments before them. They have a series of indicators right at eye level to tell them where different aspects of the car are, much like many of you have a dashboard of data and metrics. So they have to look at that dashboard and go, where are we at? They also have a feel for where the car is at. Then they get control. Now, like lame drivers like me and maybe some of you, not calling, yeah, but I'm just saying, we're not all race car drivers. But lane drivers like me, what I would think is like, okay, you do that, you get control, you wait until the end of the corner, and then you gun it again. Well, the professional race car driver knows that's not how you win a race. The professional knows that as soon as you get control of the car, as soon as you have reached a point of stability, as soon as you have reached a state of composure, then you accelerate. You accelerate in the middle of the corner. You accelerate in the middle of the corner so that when you come out of the corner, you have wonderful and great momentum. You have the wind at your back and you're lapping the people who waited. My friends, we are in the middle of a corner. We need to accelerate. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by thinking about how we're going to exit. As Jackie Stewart said, the exit from the corner is way more important than the entry. How do we plan for it? Well, we plan for this with C2C leadership. We plan for C2C leadership, and by C2C, we mean going from chaos to composure. When you are in a state of chaos, you need to introduce some composure. And when you are in a state of composure, when you've got stability, you need to consciously introduce some chaos so that you can generate momentum as you're coming up the other side. This is leadership. This is leadership in this time. And my friends, if some of you are saying like, nah, I didn't sign up for this. I mean, I'm a fair weather leader. I mean, I love coming in when the times are good. When the times are bad, I didn't sign up for this. That's what leadership is. I mean, there's no seasonality to leadership. This is what you signed up for. And if you didn't sign up for this, then you didn't sign up for leadership. You signed up for glory. So I'd ask you, are you here for the glory or are you here to actually lead? I hope you're here to lead. So how do we do that? How do we introduce chaos to composure and composure to chaos? Well, C2C leadership is really about three things. And it is bound by purpose. It is defined by your actions, and it is adopted by other people. Okay, so you're bound by the purpose that you exist for. You are defined as a leader and as a brand and as an organization. You are defined by the actions that you take during this time. And if you want to expand that out and you want to get your team on side and you want to get your company on side and you want to get your prospects on side and consumers on side, well, they adopt that by the communications you take. Bound by purpose, defined by action, adopted by communication. That's what C2C leadership is. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing is we're bound by purpose. Now, in 1970, the year I was born, what? I'm 50? Yes, I know. You're like, he looks 32, right? It's crazy. So in 1970, Milton Friedman, who's a renowned University of Chicago economist, wrote a paper, The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits. And for close to 50 years, those of us, me and you, right? The capitalists in the room, we loved this. We said, this is what we're about, man. This is capitalism. It's not our job to solve the world's problems. Our job is to pass along as much money to our shareholders as possible. And for 50 years, we clung to it. And then last August, the Business Roundtable, made up of 180 CEOs from around the US, representing 35% of the total market cap in the US, got together and said, no, this has to change. The definition of the corporation, the definition of corporate purpose needs to change because we do not have one constituent, the shareholder. We have five. We have the shareholder, sure, but we also have our customers, we have our employees, we have our suppliers, and we have the community in which we operate. This was last August. This is long before the pandemic was ever declared. This was already heading in this direction. So you are morally obligated to stand for something more, that your purpose needs to take you going from product to purpose. Your purpose is what you believe that goes well beyond what you sell. And this is a really critical time because during the pandemic, what we found is that the order of these has completely shifted. And then it went from like shareholders number one to shareholders number five now. And number one is the community in which we operate. Because even if your brand cannot sell or cannot produce services for the community, maybe you can jig that assembly line to make hand sanitizer or to make masks because your community comes first. This is where we are right now. Your purpose is now defined by the community in which you operate, then your customers and employees and your suppliers. And then finally, the shareholders can wait. We got to get through this together. So you're bound by the purpose. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you need to do this. And this is just a kind of a real estate example. But here's what happens when we enter kind of recession times, right? In real estate, all these people show up and they go, oh, times are tough. I'll tell you what we can do. We can save you money. Yeah, we're going to cut costs. We're going to cut our price. We're going to shave our margin. And then we end up in this race to the bottom, which isn't good for anybody. If you stand for something more, you can let that purpose protect your margin because it is a race to the bottom. If all of us rush in, to just play the price game. We know this. We know that as a brand that stands for something that goes beyond product, we can do more. We can add more value to justify, if not a premium price, then at least a price that allows us to keep our margin. And why do we need to keep our margin? Because, oh, I don't know, we may need to invest in other areas that may not drive revenue right away. We may need to solve other problems. We need to take funds and spend them in other places to solve problems that have emerged. We need to protect our margin in this time. So that we need to let purpose maintain our profitability and our margin. I mean, when I think of this, I always think of this great scene from Something About Mary. Harlan Williams, who was a wonderful comedian who was uncredited in the film, weirdly, I think supplied some great dialogue in this one scene, because Ben Stiller says, "What do you do?" And Harlan Williams' character goes, "You ever hear the 8-minute abs?" And he goes, yeah. He's like, "Well, I'm gonna do the 7-minute abs, not 8, 7." And Ben Stiller goes, "It's great, but what happens when someone comes up with a 6-minute abs?" And he goes, "Dude, you can't get a good workout in 6 minutes." That's what a race to the bottom is. We're just gonna go, we're fine until somebody comes up with a 6-minute abs. Then we're toast. So we need to protect our margin by protecting our purpose. The other thing we need to do is that we know that we are going to need to diversify our portfolio, or at least some of us are going to have to explore alternative forms of revenue, additional services, products to match the reality we're in. Now, if I'm Lady Gaga, which I'm clearly not, but if I'm Lady Gaga and I go, well, my purpose here is I believe I should make the best music because I'm a musician. Let's just make my purpose about the thing I sell. I believe I should make the best music. Guess what? The best that she's going to do is she's going to make music, which may be great during great times. But the second that Live Nation comes in and says no one's touring for a year, now we got a problem. How do you diversify when your purpose is all about the thing you sell? You can't sell other stuff. But if you're Lady Gaga, a brilliant brand who says, my purpose is not tied to the thing I sell. Here's what I believe. I believe that people should be free to express themselves. That's what I believe in. And so it's no big deal for Lady Gaga to go, well, here's what I do. I can act, and that ties back to my purpose. I can make music. I can have fashion. I can even start a makeup line, Our House, Your Rules, where you can see that the purpose here, the purpose of I believe people should be free to express themselves, you can see in every single one of those product executions that she has. She's acting in a completely different way to express herself. Her music, she literally has a song, I'm on the right track, baby. I was born this way. She is free to express herself in that way. Her fashion, you might think she's a freak, but she knows that people should be free to express themselves. And through her fashion choices, she wants to inspire people to express themselves. And when it comes to the makeup line, Our House, Your Rules, House Laboratories, 4 different product extensions that are all consistent with the purpose. Really, really critical when she has lost all touring revenue for at least the next 12 months. So that's why we need to have purpose. It sets ourselves up. Even Ruby, our lovely host here at Ruby, I mean, if you look at what you can see the services that Ruby provides, but from a belief standpoint, this is directly from in their own language. Now, I'm not saying this is their corporate purpose because I'm an outsider. They may have a different wording of it. But when I was looking through around on Ruby, I saw this, we believe happiness has a ripple effect. If you treat people with kindness, they're likely to pass it on. And that builds loyalty and helps businesses grow. Now I see what they're about. And I can see how their belief can be extended into everything that they do, into every person that they hire, into every service that they offer. That's purpose. Now, one word of caution here is that we've had a little bit of a purpose pivot, what I call it, over the life of the pandemic. And there's no greater example of this than a little grocery store close to me. And I know Naomi Sneakus is on the line. She may remember this grocery store. there's a grocery store there's 2 locations or 3 locations. One of them is very close to my house. It's called Terry's. It's a grocery store, but it's a ridiculous grocery store. I mean, it's those grocery stores you're like, this tangerine, it costs $12 because we polish it and we spit shine it, and those, right? Nobody said a thing for years. You could go and buy $18 tangerine and people didn't care. You want to go and spend $18 on a tangerine at Terry's? Go for it, right? This was everything they were about. Ridiculously high prices. And they tried to use that to justify quality, which in some cases they did. And there was no purpose identified with the organization. I mean, when they talked about the founder, they said, look, he believed in the best and only the best. Today, his spirit remains our guiding principle and our standard of excellence. They're justifying it in their own material to say, look, we believe in only the best. So you should probably expect some high prices. And then when Lysol wipes came in and they tried to sell them for $30 a pack, people freaked out. Why? Because now we have a shared purpose. All of us are in this together, and we all need to come together. And we will be called out as a business if we are not. So that has been a kind of a purpose pivot here. Now, the second part of this is we need to define ourselves by the actions we take. So we know that we are bound by purpose, but we are defined by action. When it comes to actions, the first things we need to do is we need to embrace our limitations. Now, there's a million actions that we can take, of course, right? I mean, we can talk about leadership. We can talk about rolling up the sleeves and getting into the trenches. We can talk about acting in a way that is completely civil and acting with respect to your employees. Of course, of course, of course. I've just focused on 3 that I think are critical to reposition ourselves to emerge out of the corner. The first is we need to embrace our limitations. All of us have limitations. Look, normally I'd be in front of you in front of a room. You think I like doing this like this? Of course I love doing this. It's completely different. What I didn't do was go on a stage and point a camera and say, I'm just going to take what I do normally and do it for the camera. Now, I've invited you into my home. I'm wearing shorts, but I've also purposely made this a little bit more intimate. I'm coming closer to you. I can cock an eyebrow and you'll see it because you're all watching me. I've embraced the limitation of this so that I can see the positives of this, the great parts of this. And when we embrace our limitations, great things can happen. Now, this is, I'm going to go to this one because I'll talk about this one. In Indiana Jones, you may have seen this great scene where on the paper, the scene was 5 pages long. It was an epic battle between Indiana Jones and this villain. And it was going to be a sword fight to end the ages. 5 pages scripted. And on the day they were going to shoot, Harrison Ford had a little bit of problem with diarrhea. Couldn't get through the scene. And so you may remember the scene, which I won't show you due to copyright purposes. Is Disney watching? No? Okay. You may remember that they have this elaborate sword thing with the villain, and then Harrison Ford just goes, shoots him. After this elaborate setup, he just shoots him. And it's such a memorable scene. And the reason it existed because they embraced the limitations of what he had before him. Now, another great example closer to home here is some of you may know Bob and Doug McKenzie, Take Off, in my opinion, one of the great comedy duos of all time, certainly one of the best Canadian exports of comedy. And how did they come up with this? How did they come up with these 2 hosers? Well, the reality is that when the show moved networks, they had a couple of extra minutes, and they're mandated by the network and the Canadian Radio Television Commission to come up with more Canadian content. They said, you need to develop more Canadian content. And the cast said, we're all Canadians. We shoot this in Canada. What are you talking about? And they said, all right, they want more Canadian content? We'll give it to them. What's the most stereotypical Canadian thing we can come up with? As a joke. The joke became an improvised bit, which then became reoccurring sketch and characters that are famous and wildly successful. Why? Because they embrace their limitations. Now, we also have to identify problems that have emerged. So we've embraced our limitations. Now we need to look at some research. We need to do some ethnographies. We need to track our consumer behavior. We need to see that what the changes that have come in and what have they generated in terms of new problems. Now, this is a tiny, 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 tiny one, but I just want to give you an example. Now, my wife is a big Starbucks drinker. I quite like the chai lattes myself. She's a tea drinker. And she's a weird tea drinker because she likes a ton of milk. Now, she said to me the other day, they got my tea wrong because what they haven't been able to do is do what she's normally accustomed to. Because normally she puts in her own milk and she likes to go glug, 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 glug. But now they can't leave the milk in. And so the staff, the baristas, are pouring in the milk, and they haven't worked out a system to say, do you go crazy for milk? Like, are we putting, 5 cups of milk in here or 2 cups or what? And so it's created this dissatisfaction with the product because the customer doesn't have the control they used to have anymore. So they need to solve that problem in order to emerge. So what are the problems that have occurred for your consumers and your targets, and how can you solve those problems? The last part here is that we need to perform a coup. And when I say coup, I mean a coup. I mean an internal coup. You need to take down the established processes, the established titles, the established responsibilities, and you need to go, we're in a different time. We need to take out the establishment that we have, the established ways of doing things. When we line up the problems with the solution, sometimes our legacy doesn't allow us to do it. Now, you may say, how do I do that? I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. This is unprecedented. That's all we've heard for 4 months. This is unprecedented. No one's ever been through this before. We have been through this before. And maybe not all of us, but some of us. And it wasn't a pandemic, but the music industry had their version of COVID-19. It was called Napster. Now, what music went through and being disrupted by Napster, we can look at and examine to go, oh, maybe we're going to go through the same thing. Okay, so let's take a look at this. What happened in music? Well, first and foremost, oh, I forgot about this. Who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it the CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? Okay, you like that joke? Okay, good. Let's take a look at, I hate when I forget that I had a slide there. So let's take a look at it. What was it? Well, it was the establishment in music, right? It was the 4 members of the establishment were the record labels, the radio stations, the record stores, and the artists. And they all had a little deal. They had it worked out perfectly. The process was tight. The business model was tight. Label said, we'll get the artists, radio stations, you know what to play, radio or music stores, because they're playing it, you know what to sell. And artists, you are welcomed into the members of the establishment by us. And if you're not good enough, you don't get to come in, and you don't get played on radio, and you don't get sold in stores. And then for years, they protected themselves. And then what happened? Boom, we give power to the people. That's right. Insurgent forces in the fields are going, oh, no, 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 no. You don't have to have the music that the man wants you to listen to. No, we're going to open up the internet and you can listen to whoever you want to. And the chaos that followed, I've spit all over my computer right now. So there we go. Sorry. So the chaos that followed this was incredible. And you know it because some of you were there, right? We throw morality out the window. We're like, who cares about pirating music? Forget about copywriting because they've screwed us for so long. I'm going to take matters into my own hand. And so it was chaos. And what happens in chaos? You get a power vacuum in chaos, right? A power vacuum comes in because the reality is what we were promised was you don't have to have the man tell you what music to listen to. The reality was consumers said, can someone just tell me what music to listen to? And a power vacuum came in as the new problems emerged. And whoever solved those problems, my friends, they just became members of the new establishment. And so it wasn't the radio stations and it wasn't the record stores anymore, but it was Spotify and it was Apple Music and it was Live Nation. just members of the new establishment who worked out their own deal by solving the problems of the day. Now, here's the critical part, because everyone said the labels are dead. The reality is, no. I mean, the stupid ones, yeah, they went away. The ones who weren't open to disruption, the ones who didn't want to solve new problems, they went away. But the labels who embraced their limitations, who performed in a coup on their own processes, not only did they emerge as members of the new establishment, they emerged more profitable than they ever were before. Why? Because they embraced the limitations. They don't have warehouses filled with CDs and albums anymore. They don't have to ship stuff all over the world. They don't have to tour listening to artists. They got a Spotify playlist. They're more profitable than they ever were. So we need to know, look at who's the establishment within our organization. What's the business deal between the different silos? How do we disrupt that? How do we introduce chaos to that state of composure? How do we identify the problems that have emerged? How do we fill that power vacuum to solve those problems so that we can come out the other side, out the other corner, as being members of the new establishment? Now, the one issue here is, and then we've got probably 5 minutes before we open it up for questions, if that's okay with our team from Ruby. Now, you may be saying, like, well, how do I, a lot of great ideas in the organization. How do I come up with that? How do I do that? I had a great opportunity to speak to 100 CEOs in Sarasota, Florida last spring. And I mean, they're the 100, like the big 100, the 100 you all know by name. And due to Chatham House rules, I can't tell you who said what or who was in the room, but I can tell you what was said. And when the CEO of a global software company who you know asked the CEO of a very, 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 very large e-commerce company about the issues of how do we allow great ideas to bubble up and how do we disrupt ourselves, this man, in his infinite wisdom and wealth in both hands, said, look, let me tell you what happens within established or within startups. A startup sees a problem, they want to solve it. They go to Sand Hill Road in San Francisco, and they go to VC1, VC2, VC3, VC4, and they just keep going until they get a yes. That's it. Once they get a yes, they get the money, they work to solve the problem. All they need is one yes. Within established organizations, all you need is one no. That's all you need. You need one no. An assistant brand manager pitches a brand manager on a great idea, and the brand manager gets a little scared, and they got a no. Idea's dead. Never sees the light of day. And within 3 months, they start eating your lunch. We need those great ideas to bubble to the surface. We need open and honest dialogue, especially if we're going to do it like this. Now, the last part of this is that it's adopted by communication. And how do we communicate in a way so we can set ourselves up to emerge? And the first thing is we need to lose the script. We need to lose the script. And, if somebody passes, maybe an acquaintance or something, what do we say? We say, I'm sorry for your loss, our deepest condolences. And we are genuine in that. But the reason we only say this line is because we're afraid to be wrong. Is that we're afraid to say something, to step outside of the approved dialogue. But when we know the person really well, when we can customize that message, we can make our condolences much more heartfelt and meaningful and memorable to the person by stepping outside of the script. It doesn't mean the script is wrong. I get it. But if in these sensitive times, we have to be willing to step outside the script. And that means we have to be willing to be wrong. This is what consumers are saying, right? Because we've all been following the same script. My health and safety is the top priority of so many brands I never even knew had my personal email. I love this one. Okay, delete email accounts. Sell house, live in woods, find bottle in river, has note inside. Our brand's COVID-19 response to our customers, right? It's because everyone's been following the exact same script. You've seen the commercials. Every single commercial starts with the same piano track and the cheap version of a Donald Sutherland voice that says, in these unprecedented times, right? if we want it to be adopted, we have to be more unique and more heartfelt in our communication. And that means we have to be more authentic. And to me, authenticity is being comfortable with your imperfections. That's all it means. And at that meeting that I was telling you about in Sarasota, a chairman of a different global software company that you know came up to me. He's from the Deep South. And he said, I used to be a VP at a large CPG, a consumer packaged goods company. And when I hit VP, they sent me on a leadership development course. And I realized that the sole purpose of that leadership development course was to get me to lose my Southern accent because they didn't feel it would be credible on a global stage. And then he goes, so I quit. Because my voice, it ain't a bug, it's a feature. And he's right. Our voices, our imperfections, our features, they're not bugs. And that's what people buy. Our brands, our corporate culture is way more authentic when we embrace our imperfections. And, the joke that I've used in this, coming into these environments of like, ooh, been in the lockdown, my roots are showing. Right. But I'm serious. Our roots, your roots are showing. And by roots, I mean your roots. I mean the things that ground you. We have a window into your life, into your bedroom, into your home office. We see your children, we see your spouse, we see your surroundings, we see the things that anchor you, we see the things that connect you to the earth, allow you to grow tall. Your roots are showing. All of our roots are showing. And those are the parts that people buy. Those are the parts that people love. And those are the parts that make you real. If we're going to do this, if we're going to emerge with great momentum out of the corner, then we need to be bound by purpose. We need to be defined by the actions we take. And we need other people to come on board. We need our ideas to be adopted. And we do that through compelling communication. That to me is C2C leadership. Now, I've been rambling, and what you may say is, yeah, but I've got some questions. So why don't we toggle on over and talk about some questions? How about we do that? Rebecca, am I giving you back sharing? Is that what I'm doing?
Yeah, give me back sharing. I've got a handful of questions, and keep submitting them, and we'll get through as many as we can.
There we go. Okay, awesome.
All right. Okay, so the first question is, what tips do you have for checking that your team understands and is connected to your purpose?
That's great. There's a couple of things that you can do there. The first thing is you need to simplify it. Okay, right out of the gate. Here's what happens in a lot of organizations, and some of you have these. So you're like, our mission statement, right? The CEO gets up on stage once a quarter and they go, let me just remind you what our mission and our vision is. And then they show a slide that's of a beautifully constructed, copywritten paragraph filled with jargon so they can address all the points and hit every discipline and everything else. And they go, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's a work of art. And the reality is you people know what it means. They don't know what it means. More importantly, they don't know how it applies to them. They don't, they're in sales. They're like, what does this mean to me? So, and this is what's great about the next session, Rebecca, that we have together, where Think, Do, Say is really this simplified operating system for an organization or for marketers to go, how do we have an operating system to the organization that is simple, a simple framework. The second thing you can do is you can over communicate. And then the third thing you obviously need to do is you need to test it out. And you need to analyze whether the actions of your organization are taking into consideration what your purpose is. And if they're not, then we need to go, what is your version of purpose? Like, what do you mean by that? And don't just repeat back to me the phrase that you were taught in your onboarding program, right? So what does that mean? And what does that mean to you? And when it's wrong, you need to address it right away. And you need to do it publicly. And I know this may go, this isn't a performance thing that you should do privately, but, and how you should is to say, you know what? You make it about you as a leader. You go, I'm really sorry because I clearly have not done a good enough job of communicating what our purpose is. If this is where we are. So it's not on you, it's on me. So let me attempt to re-clarify what that means and what the action should have been. Did I answer the question?
That is perfect. We have another question from Jeff that says, I want to lead a company where we say yes to ideas, but it seems like you reach a point where you're bogged down in ideation without actual execution. If you have 30 good ideas and can only launch 5, how do you decide which 5 to experiment with?
The ones that won't get you fired. No, I'm just kidding. There's now maybe it's because I was the creative director on Volvo for probably 10 years, or because I about a mile down from the largest General Motors plant in Canada, in a city called Oshawa, also known informally as the Schwiggity. Just so you know. But here's what I know about the car manufacturing process: that there are two parts. One is there's an assembly line, and there's the concept car. So on the assembly line, everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do, right? Everybody's job is very clear. Responsibilities are very, very clear. The metrics for success, or the definition of success at the end of the line, is very clear. We know what the costs are. We know what the margin is, everything. You put your head down, you do your job, you pass it off. In my business, my agency, we say you kill it and bill it. Kill it and bill it, go. Now, they want to innovate and they want to try something new. They go, we're going to do a concept car. And we're going to take the concept car and we're going to take it off the assembly line, small group of people, and we're going to just do it to do it. There's no hope that this thing is going to go into expectation. This is going to go into, there's no expectation that this is going to go into production. They just do it. And then when they do it, they go, this gas cap, this could work. This is cool. We're going to introduce that to the assembly line. And so it's a very responsible innovation. The problem with a lot of organizations, Jeff, you are not alone in this, especially within marketing, but in a lot of organizations, most of you, you're going to do this. You're going to hear me today and you're going to go, we got to try these 20 things that he talked about. The reality is that people are applying concept car methodology to the assembly line. They're throwing 25 things into the assembly line, and you've got a team around you going, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to define my success? How's my success being defined? Who am I passing this off to? The result is chaos. Costs go up, margin goes down, and then you go, why didn't we just do what we did last year? It's because you're introducing 30 ideas into the assembly line. You're not looking at one core idea that's got a bunch of different things on it, doing it to do it, and then finding the gold and walking that delicately over the assembly line and go, you just need to worry about this one. And then you won't get the hecklers fighting you on those ideas.
I love it. I just recently bought a new car and there is no gas cap. So that was somebody's innovation to just throw it off the assembly line. And so we don't even need that anymore.
How do we confuse people? Yeah, get rid of the gas cap.
All right, we've got another question. Love the idea of launching a coupe, but concerned about stakeholders and worried that there isn't enough time for a fight. How would you approach this?
Yep, I get it. And you can't light your torches and you're like, we're beheading the king. Like it's just not gonna work. That's a lot of organizations downplay the importance of beheading senior management. Here's what I know from, I'll switch metaphors a bit. Here's what I know from comedy. So my background's in stand-up comedy. There are two types of hecklers in comedy, okay? There's the active heckler and the passive heckler. The active heckler in comedy is the person who hears what you have said, they've totally understood it, and they go, you suck. Like, that wasn't funny at all. And how you approach that person is you have to understand you have the microphone. You have the microphone, you can dictate where that conversation goes, okay? So that's one, it's your show, it's your microphone. Secondly, you address the heckler, because in business, we all have hecklers. The active heckler who says, I don't agree with that idea of disrupting this process. So what you need to do in both cases is engage the heckler and go, what is it about the thing you didn't like, right? Presentation. I'm going to guide where this goes based on your responses, and I'm going to change my path or the course that I'm taking based on what you give me. So what don't you like? You don't like the margin? Okay, let's do the math. I'm actually right on this. Let's consult Sally. What does she think? Right? So you do that. Now, the other type of heckler in comedy is the passive heckler. The passive heckler doesn't even know you're on stage. They're looking at their phone. They're talking to their friend beside them. And they can kill a room because everybody knows they're not paying attention. And so how you do that is you go and you walk beside the passive heckler and you consciously bring them into your presentation. You call what we do in stand-up, you call it you spritz. Where are you from? What's your name? They're now actively involved in your show. In business, the passive heckler is the person who doesn't say a thing in the boardroom or in a Zoom call, but who kills your idea in the hallway, or who does back channel. Can say, hey, Mary, can you stay on the Zoom and they kill your idea? And you didn't even know that they hated it. So when it's a passive heckler, what you need to do is you need to get the record. You need to go, Mary, you have been quiet through this whole thing. I'd love to know what you think. I don't know. I'd like a little bit more time to think about it. Great. Can I call you tomorrow? Can we talk about this? I'm really love your perspective on this. They're now a part of your show. And, not sometimes the castle walls are so high that they won't let anybody in. And then you need to ask yourself, is this the organization that you want to be a part of? I think let's try putting some, what is it, honey on the Brussels sprouts or whatever that is. That a phrase? Maybe I mean I meant maybe not. Maybe I'm stupid. How do you just get people on side in a nice collaborative way? Now, my friend Leanne Davey, who's a wonderful, wonderful PhD in organizational psychology. She's a wonderful speaker and writer. She has a book called The Good Fight. She has a term called the team historian, right? And the team historian is the person who, like, whenever you go, we're gonna have sales report into marketing, and they go, tried that. Yeah, we did that 8 years ago and it didn't work. The team historian knows everything the organization has done over the years. And so Leanne's approach is what you say to that person is, what would we need to do to make it successful this time? You now bring them in and they're now part of the solution.